So welcome to Animate Earth. We are the home of contemporary animism, where really the main thing we're interested is in the relationship between humans and nature, humans and place. And it's why we're completely delighted to have Sicelo Mbatha here with us tonight, bringing in his beautiful work of connecting humans with nature in the wildness of South Africa. So we think it's going to be a complete treat for us all. So we're very excited, Sicelo. Before we start, just to say that we will run for an hour. We will take questions at the end, and feel free to use the chat during the conversation. But if you're posting any questions in there, it's unlikely that we will pick them up because we'll be focused on our speaking. So if you have questions, please do bring them at the end. That'd be brilliant. So just while the last people are coming into the room, if we could just close our eyes for a moment and just bring ourselves into our circle for tonight. And I ask that we evoke the spirit of all the places that we bring with us tonight from all over the world into this circle. And all the creatures, the beings, those that are seen, unseen, from all of those places, welcoming them all into this circle with us tonight. May they witness our service to the natural world and our relationship in it. So, Sicelo, lovely to have you. Just to tell everyone a little bit about your work, for those that don't know, you are a wilderness guide, but a very special one in that your focus is really on this connection, this soulful connection between humans and nature. And I have a beautiful quote. So this is you talking about the work that you do, which I think is really beautiful. So you say that your work is to rekindle the wildness in us all, to bring people into the presence of wildness and help open their souls to its beauty, wisdom, and infinite power to heal. That is your word.
Yes.
I would love to ask you about that work, but I wonder before we go on to that, whether you might just tell us a little bit about your story and what's brought you to this moment, what brought you to this work in the world, if that's a good place for you to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Sicelo Mbatha from South Africa. I'm a wilderness guide. Coming under the Zulu tribe. I'm based in Zululand. It's amazing how it started. It started as when I was a young man, the young boy at the age of 8 years, and we used to walk long distances to school and coming back to school. And those long distances were around 14 kilometers, crossing the rivers and heading to school. And along the way to school, we normally have some. South Africa in summer, it's very hot. So there was a big tree called Acacia tutulis, and the other people will call it umbrella thorn. And it was on top of the hill. So when we walk in that scorching heat of the summer African heat, and then we walk all the way up, and as we reach the top of the hill, and we found that the tree that we normally took a break and sat under was chopped down. So it started as a kind of like I was rebelling, and I rebelled when I found the tree chopped down, and I started shouting, "Who killed the tree?" The tree gave us the shelter and it protected us from the heat. And all of a sudden, one man has chopped it down, and I started rebelling why the tree has been cut down. And with the other friends, we started rebelling. I was at the age of 7 years at that time. I did not know that it was the beginning of the initiation to become the wilderness guide. So we started writing who he has killed the tree, has cut his own soul, writing on the rocks and writing on the river crossing. And I started rebelling like that. But when I finished my matric in 1998, I joined the national park that was nearby my village because I could not go to the varsity. And I became a volunteer and worked with the food patrols and land collapse and clearing alien plants control within the park, combating soil erosion, and doing a daily food patrol. And I came across with a lion spoor, and I put my hand over the lion spoor, and I felt something tingling and running all over my arm and just touched my heart, and I jumped around. And I was thinking, this is a kind of like shocking. And the rangers that were with me at that time looked around and saying, "Oh, you coward, you're scared even the lion spoor." But for me, it was the connection between me and the wild side. And I was finding my own inner lion. I was finding my own inner wild through the spoor of the lion. And there was a lot in my mind at that time. I wanted to be a game guide. I wanted to be a section ranger and dealing with law enforcement. And somehow I could feel that, no, I don't belong in law enforcement. I shall teach people to embrace nature. I shall teach people to embrace their inner wilderness. And luckily, I got an opportunity from the other organization called Wilderness Leadership School to start my training to become a wilderness guide. And that is when all started. So from that training, from that organization called Wilderness Leadership School, I became a training guide, and then I became a lead guide. So now I was taking people into the wilderness and washing the dust of the city and allowing the people to be coated with the dust of the wilderness, smelling and feeling the dust from the earth and getting sunbed from the earth. And that is why it's so precious, and that is why I love what I'm doing. It is because it allows people to sleep under the stars and see the Milky Way and the galaxies and listen to a leopard sowing in the middle of the night. And it allows people to sleep with the lion roaring on the horizon. And by that, it allows self, because that is when they get to connect with everything in oneness. And that is why I wanted to be a guide, and wanting to help these people to go across the threshold and to explore themselves beyond their horizons, and to explore themselves, to connect with their own soul, because we are no longer connected with souls today. All what we do doesn't allow us to connect with souls. So the work that I'm doing helps the people to connect with their own soul and have dialogue with themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sicelo. That's wonderful. I know that you have a very early story of grief that started
Yes.
you're interested in this work as well. And I wondered if you'd be able to talk a little bit about that. Your sound is fading in and out, but I hope that people can kind of follow the story. Yeah, are you happy to talk about that for a moment?
So I have mentioned that, folks, I have mentioned that we used to walk 14 kilometers to school and then 14 kilometers back. And that journey included a lot of river crossing. In fact, it included 3 river crossings. And one day, and we loved it. We were children, so we loved those things, and we tackled the rough waters. But then in the village, there were some stories that comes and goes. That, oh, we saw a crocodile. Oh, we saw another crocodile. Oh, the crocodile killed a goat. So it was something that was normal in our ears. So we knew those stories, but we did not consider it seriously. And one day we were at school and it started to rain. And then the teachers, what they did is they will actually, from school, they will release those young children to walk first, and then the older ones were kept behind so that they can continue with their subject and with their schooling. But then that was bad because sometimes we walk slowly and we eat wild fruits. We all kids, we eat wild fruits along the path to home. And by the time you reach the river, the water level is already, or the rivers are all overflowing. And we have to tackle the river. And at that time, I was only about 7 again. And we came across with the first river. We tackled it. And then the second river, it was a little bit of a stream. It was difficult because it was narrow, but with a lot of water as well, with a lot of debris as well coming down. We managed to tackle it. The last river was the main river. So when we crossed that last river, then we will then walk across to the village. And then we could see that, oh, now this is the last river, and we all holded each other. And I have a friend of mine called Sanele was there, and we were holding each other's hands. And then I was holding Sanele, and then Sanele was holding me, and then another girl, and then the rest of the kids. And then we walking, and as we so see, the rivers were not like sandy kind of, there were a lot of rocks in, so you have to be careful when you step because also rocks are slippery. So we're holding each other and we're crossing as the young children, and there was a big a kind of like a debris, like a big log coming down, and it just dismantled the line. So others lost the balance because of the weight and then this log, and then we lost it like that. And as I was trying to kind of like regain my balance, and I had a big pull from my left hand, it was a big force. So as I kind of like looked there, I heard a person shouting, "Crocodile, crocodile, crocodile!" And then we left, and then we started running towards the riverbank, and then we shouting, and so I was holding this, and then I could see that the crocodile, the tail was going spinning like this, and I tried to hold Sanele, but then I think the crocodile was more powerful than me. So it slipped through my hands, and then I ran away. And then it started doing this commotion of rotating like this in the air, and then went into underwater. So now we have to run around along the river trying to find this man, this young friend of mine, and I'm running and I could not. And then we ended up running to the village to call the elders. The elders came and there was nothing. And my friend got taken. And then the next day I was supposed to go to school. And I tell you, I've never been so scared like that in my life, because the next day I was supposed to go to school and we're writing the final exam in maths, something in maths. And then the elders came with us, help us to cross the river, and then they'll come and wait for us. But they only did it for 2 days, and then they got entangled by their daily duties, maize meal, they have to plow the fields, they have to fence the kraals. It was summer, so everybody was busy. And we started crossing this river again. And remember, I lost a friend there. That was difficult for me. So I hated the school, I hated nature, I hated the crocodiles, I hated everything. And I couldn't actually cope with life. But my mother kept on pushing me to go to school, and I actually wanted to go to school so that I can become what my friends wanted to be. At that time in my mind, I wanted to be a teacher so that I can actually help my friend to fulfill his dream or I can fulfill the dream on his behalf. So I went to school, but then when I finished my matric, I didn't want the teaching, and then I dived to conservation. And that is where it changed my life. On a daily patrol, we came across a crocodile eating buffalo that was stuck in the mud. And I was with an old man called Baba Tabete. And today I can still, in my mind, visualize it. And the crocodile were kind of like getting into the stomach of the buffalo, pulling the intestines and rumen, throwing it into the air, eating it. And we could see the buffalo trying to escape from the jaws of death, but we could tell that it won't be able to. And then I heard his last bellow, like, "Bruh," and then it's sink his heavy horns into the mud. And I was with an old man behind me saying, now this buffalo is at peace. So there are so many people on this planet that are not on peace. We have to be in peace with ourselves. And this buffalo has crossed its threshold and it left the past behind. And we as humans, we hold these two lives, the current and the past, together, and it collide and it causes confusion and we feel lost. You have let it go of the past and embrace your forgiveness and embrace the new light. The sun cannot share the sky with the moon. The sun is supposed to set in order the moon and the stars to rise. And I was a little boy at the age of 20 years, trying to find the direction of life, still haunted by my past. And those words became the medicine for me, because became the medicine that teaches me how to forgive. And I came to a point where I realized that the crocodile caught a friend of mine because it needed supper, or it needed food. So it was not the fact that it was actually a killing for the sake of killing or because of a bloodlust. It was killing because it wanted something to eat. And that is how I went through the healing. It is because of that scenario.
So because of that, Sicelo, I mean, that could have made you, that grief and that experience could have made you not want to go into the wild. You know, your work now is to take groups of people into the wild. How has that made you what you are now? How has that kind of moved you into the work that you do?
It taught me that forgiveness is the key to life. Therefore, when people are stepping into nature, they open the doors and all the senses for themselves, that they can learn about forgiveness. They can learn about that. When they tap into the wilderness, they tap into this world of peacefulness. And once they're in that world of peacefulness, it gives birth to harmony. And that harmony gives birth to forgiveness and the healing. So it is a layer, and all these things intertwine, but it needs someone to step into it and trigger those layers. So it taught me that when I'm in the wilderness, I'm in one with this harmony, peacefulness, forgiveness, and healing, and I can touch it. I can touch it in one moment by just sitting and doing solitude over the hill, or by just sitting around the fire in a silent, dark night. And I can touch all these things with myself and with my soul. And the work that I'm doing has helped me actually to empower myself that I to come and experience that harmony, to come and tap into that space of serenity and to that space of oneness and interconnectedness, and into that space of understanding Ubuntu and understanding that there is super great life into simplicity. It is true, sleeping under the stars, that I get empowered, that I can also support the rest of the people who are able to cross the path, who are able to walk into the white side.
Do you find that everybody can experience, can everyone step across that threshold, or do you think, because also that's where you grew up and you had those experiences, I wonder if that has made you more sensitive, or is it possible for anybody to shake the dust out of their eyes?
Just tell you one thing. I once took a young man from New York City, an African American from New York City, and we were crossing the river, Umkhiwane River, and he said to me, I am crossing the river for the first time in my life. I don't feel scared. I feel so much home here. Why do I feel so much home here? Within the depths of our genes, within the depths of our soul, this has been existing for a long time. And tapping into the wilderness kind of revive it. We all have it. We all have it. It doesn't mean that you must, even if you come from London and you start walking into an African wilderness, it gets revived. You feel one with yourself, you feel more alive, and you feel like this is home, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm born next to nature, and I've been hiking and walking, and since I was a young boy. No, we all have it. It's inside here. It's like when you take the lion from the circus, from the zoo, and you release it to the wild, and it becomes the wild lion. And we have that as well.
And how long does it take to be able to feel that? Is it different for different people? So if you take a group into your beautiful wild places, what do you do? How does that look? How long does it take for you to bring people to this experience?
The most important thing here actually is, how do you conduct the threshold? How do you help people to cross the civilization and leave the wilderness behind? And how do you hold the space? You know, how, if you are at peace with yourself, everything, and you illuminate that, you actually reflect that peacefulness as a guide, as a wilderness guide. I manage it by being at peace with myself. And by doing that, I carry my weapon, and my weapon is at peace. I'm at peace with everything. And that reflects to people. And that is very important, because you are now going to another world. You're leaving civilization behind, and you are now in the wilderness. And once you're in the wilderness, you have to be at peace, and you do not fear and respect animals. And mostly people would take, like, it depends, people will take like an hour or a day, other people 1 day, and they start clicking into nature. Other people, they just land, and then they said, this is home. It depends, but how do I support people to cross that threshold is very important as a guide, that I help them to cross the threshold safely, to go to this transition safely, that they become more positive with themselves, that they then reveal the light within themselves, and then they're being guided by their own light, other than being used as someone who's pulling them with the wagon It's not like that. I'm helping them to shine their own light and trust that their light is strong, that it can shine their path, and hoping that it is the same light that will help them to when they go back to civilization, and they can use the same light during the dark times of their lives in the civilization. So it's all about finding that light. And it can take an hour, it can take 2 hours, it can take a day, but the essence is to find the light. It doesn't matter how long does it take, but it's to find the light.
And once that's found, is it possible for people to hold on to it, or do they need to keep coming back?
That's a thing that I always get. This question I always get from people. I call it an anchor. So how can you, so once you are in your world, the world is shaking you, it's pulling you, it's stormy, and how can you use the wilderness to anchor? How can you use the experience to anchor yourself? It is very possible that you can anchor yourself. It is very possible that you can use that light. You cannot leave that light. And by doing that, you do look at your journals and read books that takes you into the wilderness. And by doing that, you are reviving what you have experienced. Look at what you've written during your journey into that place. Walk into the garden, work, use your hand to work with the earth. Plow vegetables in pots. If you're living in a flat, just put vegetables. By doing that, you're anchoring yourself, because you are earth and the earth is you. So by intertwining with that, you are anchoring yourself. So it's possible. And people sometimes think they should be in a deep desert in South Sudan, then they can anchor themselves. No, in your place. By having a pot of flowers, putting water in that is a way of anchoring yourself. Working in your garden, touching the soil, the earth, is the way of anchoring yourself. Walking along the lake, walking at the park, watch the sunset, feel the wind blowing your hair. It's also another way of anchoring yourself. It's possible. It doesn't have that people shall come to Sicelo to come into the wilderness so that they revive that light. No, you can do it at home. You can do it when just close everything and close your eyes and start visualizing your experience. It is a way of reviving it.
Finn's just asked an interesting question, actually, Sicelo. Who are the people that come with you? Do they come from all over the world? Or is it mainly people from your country that want to experience the wilderness of their own country?
Well, this is a very sad question to answer. Since I wrote a book, I'm starting to recognize at home, but mostly more supported by German, lot from German, and now in my own country is Cape Town, and in my province not yet, but Cape Town is taking over my own country, is the one that is taking over everything that is more coming into the wilderness with me, and lots from German as well. A lot of people from German. I'm hoping I will get also people from UK, and as well as I'm gonna go to UK, and then we can intertwine and intermingle into an African wilderness and dance naked under the African bush. I'm hoping all of those things, but mostly they from Germany. Yes.
Mm. So you're coming to England in about 3 weeks' time. You're coming to do a walk with us into the wilds of the English Lake District. Do you think, I mean, I'm going to be really interested to see kind of what you make of the difference between your wilderness and our wilderness. It's not really wilderness, but do you think that you will be able to find the same light of your own, the same anchor in our wilds?
Yeah, it's always tricky. It's always tricky when I'm in Europe. I have a lot of, I don't know. One day I think we'll have to talk, we talk about how do I anchor myself when I'm in Europe. It's a long story. I was in Bremen in Germany, and we were walking along the street, the stream with a group of students, and I looked this stream, and there was something similar with my own stream, and I thought, it's my first time coming in Germany. Where did I find this stream? Where did I see this stream? And only to find that the stream that the way it zigzag and meandered, it looked like the stream that I normally avoid when I'm back home in South Africa in the wilderness, because it's packed with black rhinos, and black rhino is a very aggressive creature. So I avoided the stream. I'm very fearful to that stream. And now I look at it and it looks similar like the stream that I normally avoid at home. So here is, it actually, what you carry is within you. And when you carry something within you, when you carry this little stream within you, you can find any stream where you can quench your thirst. It doesn't matter you're in Europe. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So I can find my own little Mfolozi in your land and anchor myself in that. So it always gives me, that is why I always say, oh, I want to arrive first before the people arrive, because I want to find that little corner that I will use to anchor myself, that will have similarities with my home. Then I anchor myself with that. So, and you may have that. You may have that piece of land that you just anchor yourself. That is a refuge for your soul when you have difficult time, and you just go there and everything seems to melt down. And I always have that when I'm abroad. And therefore,
Wow.
it's possible.
Yeah, we don't have any black rhinos, by the way, in the Lake District, but we have foxes, and probably they're about the biggest things that we have. So two questions come up for me there. One is this thing about home. How important do you think, so we carry the images, we carry our anchors with it. How important do you think, do those anchors come from home, from where we grew up? Do they come from where so you're from Zulu land, do you think, and I'm imagining that your traditions are still very linked to the land there. Yes, where do these anchors come from then for us who are less embedded in land and move about more? Where do anchors come from?
I don't know how would I start this. Anchors come from hope, and we have to have hope first. And anchors come from love. Anchors come from deep understanding of what love is, and loving unconditionally. Anchors come from honesty. Anchors come from walking in the wild side. Anchors come from dancing naked in the wilderness. Anchors come from crossing the wild rivers. Anchors come from loving your family. Anchors come from playing with your children. There's a lot of ways to get those anchors, to get those lights. And what keeps you alive as human, and exactly what keeps you alive is what is an anchor in your life. exactly what it keeps you alive and what keeps smile in your face. It's exactly what gives you light in the darkness. So it comes from it's big, it's vast. It comes from the sunset and from the sunrise and the moonrise and the waves of the ocean. It depends. How can you reconnect yourself with it?
And if we don't have the anchors of a place, are we? Are we?
The shit hit the fan when you don't have anchors. Yes, you can rebuild it. You can. It's a. You have to understand the role of an anchor first. And I always say it because young children and the youth today, they're looking upon me as their role model. And I say, I have to anchor myself because everybody wants a piece of me, you know. I'm being called there and there. And if you don't have your anchors in place, and that is when we start witnessing people plunging into drugs. That is when we find people plunging into a lot of a kind of unpleasant moment where they ended up committing suicides. It is because there's a part of them that has been uprooted. It is because there's a part of them that has died. It is because there's a part of them that has been suffocated and drowned. And therefore, we need the anchors to guide ourselves through those moments of despair, fear, and then the fear of unknown. And we need anchors to keep ourselves floating above those elements.
So what's your feeling about where the world, huge question, apologies, you know, how do you feel about where the world is at the moment, in that so many of the places that we would have anchored in, much of our home is being destroyed or wounded? I don't like to talk about hope.
I understand.
About hope, but what's your feeling about where we are and the possibility of healing now?
You see what, Rachel, the problem about us, human species, is we actually need to be educated about that we are the earth. I think somehow our love and our life is based on taking from the earth. And we can see that it causing climate change. There's a lot of disease. There's a lot of carbon emission. We overfishing the oceans. We're polluting the rivers. Cut down Amazon forest. We're forgetting that whatever we do to earth, we're doing it to ourselves. I think that needs to be hammered a lot, because if you look at a human history, it's based off harvesting from the earth, taking, and we're still continuing this in an enormous speed. I think it's a time, again, to kind of like hammer that seed in our heart that we must be careful of what we do to earth, because we are actually harming ourselves. That's the first thing. The earth is actually heading to a critical moment right now. The climate change, all these cyclones, and all these things are the consequences of what we do to our environment. But how can we do that? How can we remedy that process?
Yeah.
What we are doing now, can you hear me? What we are doing now is a part of remedying the process. What we are doing now is a part of remedying that process. We are already planting the seeds in the heart of the people that they shall be aware of it. And it can be conducted through having seminars like this. It can be conducted through having rituals on the forest, talk to the youth. It can be conducted through talking to the schools. It can be conducted through talking to churches. It can be done in a lot of huge scales. But me and you have started, and now we have started as we are talking about it.
All of us have started by being
All
here.
of us, all of us have started. Thank you, you get it. All of us have started, and we are being aware of it. And now I will be sharing this conversation tomorrow morning with my youth in my village. And it is a part of spreading the seed. I will be sharing this on my platform, on my Instagram, on the Facebook, and that. And it is also a part. I share this along the cycles when I'm on the wilderness trail, and it's a part of, so it's a part of spreading and planting the good positive seed. And we are doing it. We have to put hope and do it more, and increase the tribe as well.
I'd love to open up for questions. So if anybody has a question, I think there's so many of us, it's going to be raising your electronic hand, please, so that I can see you. So from the reactions tab at the bottom. In the meantime, just while everyone's thinking and plucking up courage to put their hands up, I've got one from Maria, although I think you might just have answered it probably. So we called this talk the Spirit of Ubuntu. And she's asking, how can Ubuntu, which is everything you're talking about, help us with spreading the word, with the issues that we see? I feel you've answered that, but is there anything else that you would like to say on that?
Can you repeat the question for me?
How can Ubuntu help us with this?
So when you look at Ubuntu, it has got a lot of elements within. It's not about talking, but it's about the action. So putting it into doing is how Ubuntu has been generated. So if you help your neighbor by giving something without expecting anything in return, it's how Ubuntu generated. And a friend of ours that asked the question must start talking about it and doing something with the neighbor nearby her, the flatmate at work. And that is how he can actually, the person can spread the awareness, and that is how Ubuntu can help us through that. Because Ubuntu is the interconnectedness of everything surrounding you, including you as a person in that cycle, not on top of the pyramid, in that cycle. And how do you actually, in that cycle, spread the seed within the cycle? Talking to people, talking to friends, and that is how you can be able to be assisted by Ubuntu. You have to be a part of the action, not talking about it. And then by being a part of the action, you are now putting Ubuntu into action.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sicelo. Thank you, Maria. Finn, would you like to unmute?
Wonderful. So I'm actually an African as well, grew up in Zimbabwe, and I resonate with a lot of your stories. I think I really grew up through my feet, really. And I'm really curious about this culture question, because I find that I've tapped into the work here in the UK, but I don't see people of color or African people chasing the nature connection like I do maybe some of my white middle class colleagues. And I'm saying this with openness and sensitivity to try and understand if there are certain cultures that are so disconnected and they need it more, or whether, because you talk that it's in all of us, but interestingly, you don't work with a lot of your local indigenous people from what I hear.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like tourist wilderness connection. Because I don't have Africans coming to England saying, let me do wilderness trips with you to, you know, to places. So I'm just curious about that dynamic of culture in this work.
Good question, Finn. Thank you so much. That's such an amazing question. And this is very true. And it's I was talking about it on my previous trade, and all my clients were white people. So you're touching a very sensitive question to me, and it's a very straight and true that you talk about it. And there's a lot of organization in my country that is encouraging Black communities to step into the wilderness. In my country, in South Africa, if you look at the history of conservation, my own people were pushed aside without any compensation and said, you are that side, and this place is now going to be the game reserve. And that built a lot of animosity between the locals and the game reserve, because locals were pushed aside. And now we're talking about, how do I bridge that as the people? Because I don't get a lot of Black people myself. I don't get a lot of my own culture, my own people of my own color into the wilderness. They don't come. But where they will go is they will go to the lodges, they will go to these resorts, they will do bungee jumping, they will do quiet parking, they will do, but to sleep in the wilderness and under the stars, it's exotic, it's too exotic for them. And how do we bridge that? And you're talking the truth if you say you can't see a lot of Black people into the wilderness. And how do I bridge that as the person, as the guide? Is we have the organization that I conduct, that is, we call it the Call of the Wild, the Roof of the Wilderness. With the other big organization like the Wilderness Leadership School, it's also helping to take and introduce people into the wilderness and take them and put them into the wilderness so that they can start reviving that feelings of being in the wild and connect with nature. So it is still happening. It's happening in a minimum scale, but eventually it will happen.
Brilliant, thanks Finn for bringing that in. Would anybody else like to ask a question, either in the chat or electronic hand? Leading on from that, Sicelo, I was wondering about Indigenous practice, kind of connecting people to wilderness. Is that still going strong in your communities?
There's a lot of ways of ceremonies. There are ways of ceremonies that are actually need to be conducted into nature. So again, Rachel, wilderness is a place of, it's a larger area that has no roads, no building, and no permanent structures. And normally those places are fenced, are in the game parks. So then I would say there are rituals that we conduct in the places of nature, outside protected areas. Yes, there are rituals like that are including men and nature, women and nature. Yes, there are rituals and ceremonies that we conduct in nature, not in the wilderness, because the wilderness is something that you have to pay money to go there in South Africa. It's basically, sometimes I think me and Finn will have to talk over this thing, because it's getting into the wilderness in South Africa is very expensive also. And we have the Black communities that are still battling to get bread for supper today. So it's a hell of a mission to plan to go there, because you still need to feed yourself here, and then therefore you can take care of your soul. You see, so if you're hungry in your stomach, you can't feed your soul, because you are worried about your family, about that other stuff. So, but then going back, yes, there are some rituals that we perform into nature as the Zulu, as a Zulu tribe. I can name few of them as well.
I'd love you to do that, Sicelo, but I'm going to ask Joe to ask a question. Hello, Joe, you've always got fabulous questions.
Hello, Rachel. Yeah, thank you for the talk. Yeah, beautiful and uplifting. And my question actually synchronistically beautifully ties in. So one of what brings me to animism is I've been working in constellations, which I understand comes from Bert Hellinger and his time with the Zulu people. And it's his kind of translation of some of the rituals that he witnessed, but then westernized and called constellations. So for him, I believe that means like multi-dimensional maps, but taps into the soul and spirit, and also what he called the knowing field. So for me, I would prefer to honor it by calling it like if there was a name that you could share that's the ritual of the Zulu people, I would much prefer to say this comes from this ritual rather than this comes from a sort of Christianized version of it. So yeah, any rituals that you could share would just really touch my heart and my connection to the work I do, but also the land.
We do have a ritual called Ubuyisa, which means to bring back the spirit. So in that ritual, we are using a tree called Ziziphus macronata buffalo thorn. And what happens is the elder of the family cut the branch of the tree and take the branch of the tree to a place where someone died. And then we put down the branch and call the name of the person who has died. And then the elder believed that that person spirit enter into the branch. So the branch become the vehicle that transport the spirit of the someone dead back home. So that is how that is important. And then when we do that, we will take the branch back home, and the someone that is carrying the branch will have to communicate with the spirit. So let's say maybe we're crossing the road, and then the elder will say, "Now, my son Sicelo, we are crossing the road. Please, we are going home. Don't leave behind. We're going home." And then when we get home, we will take that branch into the ancestral spirits, and we put it in the ancestral spirits. And then the traditional beer can be brewed to welcome the spirit. And then the elders will then perform a ritual of a goat ceremony where the goat will be slaughtered, and the certain part of the body of the meat of the goat will be eaten by the different part of the people as well, female, young boys, and males. So that is and it is still alive. We get a lot of people, like the doctors who are doing all this training in hospitals, they understand that it's still active. I'm not talking about an ancient thing. I'm talking about something that has survived for a long time, and we use that. We call it Ubuyisa, or the burial ceremony.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you. I'm humbled. Thanks. Thank you.
For that one, Joe. Well, we're pretty much there, I'm afraid. It'd be lovely to talk to you for so much longer, Sicelo, and we will be able to do that in about 3 weeks' time. So we look forward to your trip to the UK. We'd love to have you come back and speak to us online again. Yeah, for those of you who would like to know more about Sicelo's work, his book, Black Lion, Alive in the Wilderness, is very beautiful. So I really would recommend that. And of course, for those of you who are going to be moving through South Africa at any time, then to go on a wilderness walk with him would be gorgeous. Also happening in the English Lake District, but probably not as many black rhinos, was it, that you were worried about in your stream? Yeah.
Well,
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Sicelo. Would you like to say a prayer of gratitude for our time?
Thank you so much for everyone and for having me. I send a lot of light, and I wish the angels that they can protect us. I invite the angels to help us with finding light, inviting the angels of the earth to protect our family and give us strength and courage to face the life. Spread the seed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.
Wonderful, thank you. And Finn has asked whether you might be able to say
Siyabonga kakhulu.
Zulu, if that's possible. Would that feel comfortable for you or not?
Wow, I can say it. Siyakhuleka emadlozini amakhulu, siyakhuleka ey'ngulwezini zomhlaba. Siyanxusa ukuthi besiphe ukukhanya, siyanxusa ukuthi besiphe ukuthokomala komoya, siyanxusa ukuthi besiphe ukugqama komphefumulo, besiphe amandla engqondo, besiphe umdlandla wokulwa nezifo. Siyakhuleka bafowethu, siyabonga kakhulu. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sicelo. Sending lots of love to you. Safe travels. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, for coming. See you next time.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thanks. Thank you.